Welcome back to the Healthy Workplace, the podcast where we dive deep into the workplace culture, leadership, and employee well being. I'm your host, Dr. Williams, and today I'm honored to welcome not just an expert in her field of work, but I consider her my dear friend, someone whose leadership insights are transforming the way organizations thrive. Dr. Quenga is a respected leader and expert in workplace culture, known for her commitment to building inclusive, healthy, and high performing organizations. Her work explores the intersection of leadership, employee experience, and cultural transformation, helping companies not only perform better, but also become better places to work. What makes today even more special is Dr. King is not just my colleague. We also went to the doctoral process together. I believe you graduated in 2022, and I was shortly after that in 2023. So it's always a joy to have and reconnect with colleagues from the past as we went through this doctoral program together, and especially to learn from someone whose passion and wisdoms continue to inspire myself as well. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Kinga to the Healthy Workplace podcast. Welcome, Dr. Kinga. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great, great. So, Dr. Kinga, just if you can, just let our listeners know a little bit about yourself, school, occupation, family, or basically a little bit about yourself and who you are.
So I am Dr. Kenga. I did go to school with Dr. Williams, and I am a prior military wife, mom of three. We traveled the world, done a lot of really cool things, and learned a lot from the different areas that we've lived in that kind of went into this program. So it's really exciting to really kind of apply all of the prior teachings and bookwork teachings that we went through into my current workspace now.
Okay, and how has earning your doctorate degree and PhD changed your life in any way?
It put me in a position to create positive change in the workplace, which is the primary reason why I went to school for IO to begin with.
Okay, okay. So we're going to start with some basic questions. Mainly we're talking about workplace culture and leadership. So, in your opinion, how would you define a strong, positive workplace culture, and what roles does leadership have in shaping that culture?
So, a positive workplace culture is one where employees feel valued. They need to feel respected, supported, and they definitely want to be aligned with the organization's mission, values, goals. Um, you definitely want to focus on open communication, trust, collaboration is a really big one. We've found a lot of success there.
Hmm.
Recognition of their achievements, inclusivity, and a shared commitment to both individual and organizational growth.
Okay. Now, in your occupation experience, have you ever experienced a leader who transformed like a toxic workplace into something thriving, that when they walked in they said, this workplace needs some help, it needs fixed? Have you ever witnessed a leader transform that into a positive workplace culture? If you did, can you
Yes,
give us a story on that, please?
yes, absolutely. Uh, was in a space where the clinical outcomes were really good, but the patient and employee experiences needed significant improvements. So,
Hmm.
what we did was make sure that the patients were put at the center. So, you want to redefine the mission to focus on patient experience. We introduced empathy training for all of the employees
Okay.
from top down.
Mm.
Introduce that empathy training for them. Ensure ongoing focus is placed on patient satisfaction as well as staff engagement.
Okay.
Um, and that it helped improve staff well-being as well by implementing wellness initiatives, mindfulness programs, and just different ways to improve morale and help reduce burnout.
Okay. And like, have you ever had a toxic leader? And what traits did they have that eroded that workplace culture? that, like, if you were already in a positive workplace culture and you got this new leader that came on, and he or she was just a toxic person, and how did their behaviors basically decline job satisfaction, employee morale, things like that?
Employees want to feel heard, and when they
Hmm.
are not heard and they're voicing their concerns, it in the last space that I was in, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of toxicity. There was a lot of, hey, we feel like this is going to work. We feel like these things should be implemented. If not, we don't. It doesn't have to be a quick rollout. Just something slow that can be worked in there. And they didn't care. They were there for they wanted to do their time so they could put it on their resume. They made that very
Hmm.
clear. I'm only here because I need to work in a specific space in order to move on. So it was made very clear that, the care for the program and the employees was not at that top priority. And when employees hear that, you go into well, you don't care, so I'm going to care just as much, right? And maybe some employees were sabotaging on purpose because
Hmm.
why am I going to make you look good if you don't care? And so it really just creates such a negative environment that nobody really wants to work in.
Right, right. And so what advice do you have for new leaders that come into an organization? Like, let's say a manager just got hired at your organization. What advice will you give them to help them gain trust of their employees, especially when it comes to uh, positive workforce performance, and mostly morale of the company? Like, let's say your company is in a it's not doing so well in like job satisfaction, or the morale is very low because a prior leader was very toxic, as you explained. But now you got a new leader coming in, and employees might seem to think like, okay, we got a new leader, what's this person all about? And so how can a new leader gain the trust of employees?
Listen first, act later. I
Okay.
think that's a huge one. Come into the program, understand the team dynamics,
Hmm.
understand their challenges, understand the history. Um, sit one on one with the staff, ask open ended questions. What is working well? What do you wish was different? Showing respect, acknowledge the team's efforts and their successes. Um, don't assume that just because you are a new leader coming into the position that you automatically come in with trust. You still have
Right.
to learn, earn your trust through your actions.
Yeah.
um, and you can do that by being transparent, communicate your intentions very clearly with the
Hmm.
staff. Let the team know what you don't, and be open to learning. If you're a new leader and you come into a building, you have people who have been there for 10, 15 years, and you have people who have been there for 2 months, and everybody has something to teach, regardless of how long you've been a leader, or what the case may be. Follow through on
Okay.
commitments. Yeah, following through on commitments. Small actions matter. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
And do you think employees can respect a leader who is accountable for his or her actions, especially a new leader when they're coming in? Do you think
absolutely.
that's possible as well?
Absolutely. To be a new leader is hard. And, when you enter into a new field or building or, place of business, there's always going to be a huge learning curve. And so, when you mess something up and they say, hey, manager, hey, this, you didn't do this right. This is not how we do this here. Just apologize. Okay. I apologize. I am new here. I'm learning. And just
Hmm.
having that open conversation and dialogue, I think they'll respect that versus saying, well, this is how I did it and this is how it's done. Just being very accountable for your actions, be approachable, be visible, just
Hmm.
be there. Yeah.
Right, right. And so one of the things that I always tell like new leaders when they come in is first, don't try to go in there and change things so fast,
Right.
because change management is very important, especially in the field of IO, and we're talking about organizations, because like you said, some employees been there for like 10, 20, 30 years. They are doing it one way, that way works. Then you might get a new leader in there, and then all of a sudden they want to change things. And we both know that change needs to happen in like steps, slowly over
Correct.
time that change needs to
Mhm.
happen. Instead of just like going in there, oh nope, we're not doing it this way anymore. So
Right.
that kind of disrupts the flow of things as well.
Mhm.
So my other question is, sometimes you have managers that are great managers, but the leadership above them isn't very aligned to the workplace culture. You might have a caring manager, and like I said, like the CEO of the business doesn't quite get the diversity, inclusiveness, and all that. They're always thinking about the bottom line. But the managers, on the other hand, they're the ones that are dealing exactly, or especially with straight to those employees as well. So if the upper leadership is not aligned to the workplace culture, how can the managers keep that culture going with their employees, even when the leadership is not?
Ah, tough question. I do believe, as a middle manager, you have to be able to kind of bridge that gap,
Hmm.
right? So you want to make sure that you're modeling your core values, protect and
Right.
empower your team, recognize and celebrate the wins, build microcultures within your
Hmm.
program, and just make sure you're influencing. Senior leaders through results. So,
Hmm.
by taking in, as the middle person, you take in the positive results, you push them up and show them, hey, these are the things that we're doing. So essentially, you want to be a culture carrier.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, and just focusing on what's within their control, such as behaviors, communications, and team experiences.
Right. And so in also in the office environment and culture, we have older employees and we have younger employees. The older ones we tend to call like the boomers, and the younger ones are like Gen Z, I think it is. And I don't know. I mean, is millennials considered young employees as well? I guess you consider millennials young as well. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
and we probably fall in the Gen X type, category. But what are some of the biggest cultural difference you observe between younger employees and older employees?
So, using my current workspace now as kind of that vessel. So you have the Gen Z millennial types. They value flexibility. They are purpose driven. And they try to set clear boundaries between their work and their personal life.
Hmm.
Where the Gen X and boomers, they focus on loyalty, stability, and they see work as something that's part of their identity.
Right.
Um, so they have different attitudes with the work life balance. They have different preferences in communication. One wants real time digital communication, if they want to communicate via Slack or text messages. And then you have the emails. We have people who call me over, the corded phone line, or structured, in person meetings,
Right.
um, and just, the younger generation are more comfortable going into roles that would promote growth
Right.
within the company, where some of the Gen X and boomers, they enjoy their longevity and their tenure. I've
Okay.
had a lady who has worked with the company for upwards of 25 years, and she's only gone up one step from direct care, and she loves it there. She absolutely loves it. She values her work. She feels that's where she makes the most impact. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of where you see that difference.
Right. Right. And I know that after COVID was, initially cleared for some of us in organizations, they were trying to hire, employees back to the office. And I would see, even in my own city, I would see signs up there that says we're closed because nobody wants to work anymore. And so I thought about that for a while, and I was like, well, you know, I see the younger generation, they do want to work, but they don't want to work in a toxic environment. They don't want to work with someone who's yelling or screaming at them
Yeah.
or calling them all throughout the night. Because I think like the older generation, if an email got sent at like 3 in the morning, the older generation's jumping up and answering it. But the younger generation's like, hey, these are not my work hours. I'm not answering that email till I come into work. And
Yes.
so do you think there's a difference in maybe like work life balance when it comes to older generations and the younger generation as well?
Absolutely. Because, the the older generation, like you said, if an email comes through, most of them, they don't get it until they come in during their work hours, and then they leave, and so all of that is completely disconnected. They're off at the casino, or doing what they want to do, while the younger generation has complete access to their phones. But I think now, there is more of a drive in the workforce to separate. It's almost a forced disconnection.
Right.
I get yelled at pretty often by my boss, because my phone will ring 24 hours a day, and we do operate a 24-hour facility. And so a lot of times people on the other end of that, you know, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. phone call almost expect that I'm going to answer. So, the being on for 24 hours a day is tough, but making sure that you do have boundaries. I think, because I kind of bridge both sides of the age gap spectrum. So I find myself, depending on the day, I teeter. But there is a big difference in work life balance, between the
Okay.
generations.
So, and because workplaces are going towards diversity and being inclusive as well, so how can leaders or I guess you could say implement strategies, especially to younger employees that are coming into the workforce? Because we are getting very diverse in our country as well, and so these employees that are coming to work, they come from all different backgrounds, cultures, religions. So how can leaders uh, feel, I guess you could say, welcome those type employees into the office where they feel like they are being seen?
Um, we want to make sure that you celebrate, the diverse oh my goodness, the diversity,
Hmm.
between, different people. You want to make sure that regardless of your race, your gender, disability, background, you want to be valued. So, um you know doing like round robin sharing,
Hmm.
anonymous idea submissions, making sure that inclusion is not just a moment. It
Hmm.
has to be an organizational mindset, right?
Right.
So just
Right.
making sure that you are focusing on that and practicing it on a daily basis.
Right, right. And like I remember when I was working in the post office in the warehouse, and I had a some of my coworkers, they were of the Muslim faith. And so, they pray a few times a day, and we were on 12-hour shifts. So when it was the managers and leaders knew about this. So when it was time for them, one of the managers would come down and take his or her spot on the line so that the my friend can go into they had a room in the back, everything where they can just do their prayer
Right.
and come back into their work. And so that was a manager who understood, diversity and the importance of being inclusive in the workplace. Now, granted, they didn't have to do that, but they did it because they knew it was important to that person's faith. And I will
Yes.
tell you that after that was done and the months, this person was like one of the best employees there, got promoted. They said no one has ever took the time out to do that for him because it was like, you're here to work and I don't care about your religion or where you're from. You just do the job that you're supposed to do. But he was saying that how the manager just took that extra step to allow him to pray, especially during, the months that they were fasting as well. And so, and I think when managers and leaders can recognize those different backgrounds and those different cultures, it just makes the workplace that much better for employees in overall.
Agree. They just Everybody wants to feel valued and included in the workspace. And I think the more that is practiced, the better outcomes workplaces will have.
Right. And so, have you ever, and you're sure you probably maybe you have done it as well, but being a successful mentorship to a younger employee, like let's say that new employee's fresh out of college, they're in their 20s and they are starting the workplace. Have you ever seen any successful mentorship, or have you yourself mentored someone in your line of work?
Yes. So, when I was maybe about a year into my current role, and we had a new girl, she came on, she started, and she was at the direct care level.
Hmm.
Great worker. She was super energetic, very engaging with our residents. And but she was very loud, and she would become almost create unnecessary chaos on our floor,
Right.
not because she was trying to create chaos, but because that's her personality, is just big and loud. And then she was kind of hanging around with people who were
Hmm.
kind of not really aligned with company culture, and she kind of slid. We were seeing her slide, but myself and a few others saw such great potential in just how she was and the way that she came on. She started very strong. And so we kind of sat her down and said, hey, when you came to us, you showed these positive things, but recently we have noticed a bit of a change. And so over maybe this last year and a half to 2 years, we have been able to see such a significant impact. I mean, this girl went from being, when she walked into the building, some of the leadership were very, oh, here we go. Now they're like, oh, I'm so glad she's here. Thank goodness she is here. And so, just the way that we've been able to have open conversation, and she was very receptive to feedback as well. And so I
Hmm.
think that's important, right? Being receptive to feedback. But watching her kind of go through this and grow, and, when I have conversations with my leaders and, my other supervisors, they are very happy and very impressed. And so just being able to watch that gradual change through
Okay.
mentorship and showing, you know, you can't just say how to be a leader. You have to be able to provide, ways to show them how as well. So if you're able to model behavior um, for them, then that goes a long way as well.
Okay. So, as we advance in our society, especially in our workplace, we do have trends that are starting to emerge. In your line of work, have you seen any trends, or what trends do you think that leaders should pay very close attention to in the workplace?
Something that you mentioned earlier is having true flexibility, not just remote work,
Hmm.
right? So having workplace flexibility means more than just the location. It's about having autonomy, asynchronous work, and outcome-based performances. So teams want that flexibility on how they work, not just typical policies.
Hmm.
I do think transparent decision making is something that should be paid attention to. People want to know how and why certain decisions are made, especially in my line of work.
Hmm.
When we admit a new patient, why is this person here? What kind of thought process went into admitting them? We don't feel like this person is a good fit. And so being able to have those conversations with your workers is important.
Okay. And can you think of any cultures, or I guess you could say traditions, that no longer need to be in the workplace anymore? Like traditions 20 years ago might not be effective as we are living in the workplace now. So, can you think of any traditions that probably doesn't serve the workforce now anymore?
Um, Shifting towards a healthier culture overall, I think is important. So, um, I just was kind of discussing the always on go mentality
Hmm.
previously. I do think that that type of mentality is going away. I think it was not existent. And then there was a huge increase in that because everybody had access to phone. You had immediate access to your emails all the time. If your boss wanted to communicate something with you at 10 o'clock at night, they'll send you a text message. It comes directly to you. If you're awake, you have it. So you almost feel the need to respond. And I do think just from conversations that, those types of workplace traditions are kind of slowly declining. There's they're encouraging the disconnection, and I hear it a lot as well in my workspace, encouraging disconnection, focusing on autonomy and trust in the workspace rather than micromanaging,
Right.
and setting those boundaries and expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
And and so like the main reason I asked that is because, we have the older workers and we have the younger workers. Um, if and I gave an example to one of my friends, he was a younger coworker. He got a text message. His work is from 8 to 4. That's his work contract. That's what he get paid from 8 to 4.
Mhm.
And he goes to the gym around 6:30 each morning, comes home, eat breakfast, then goes to work. That was his routine. So he gets a text message at 3 in the morning from his supervisor saying that a meeting is at 7 a.m. And so he's like, wait a minute, I'm not coming in there at, 7 a.m. because my work is from 8 to 4. And so he was like, "You sent this message, 3 in the morning when he said, I didn't even check it till it was time for me to, get ready for work." And so he was saying how everybody was just, so mad, because it was mostly all the younger employees that didn't show up for this 7 o'clock meeting. But the older workers, they were accustomed to that type of deal. Okay, we got my work is 8 o'clock, but I just checked this text message and it's, and now I got to rush into work. So all the older people, older employees came into work, but none of the younger people were there. So the younger people were more like, no, I get paid from 8 to 4. This is when I come in. If you want to have a meeting, it needs to be between my hours of work. And
Mhm.
so, but the older employees, they kind of looked at it as like you said in the beginning, you're not loyal to the company. You young people don't want to work. You young people this, just a bunch of stereotypes and like that. So I always told myself it's like, you as leaders, we have to understand that, we have workers. Okay, you're working from 8 to 4. One, as a leader, I'm not going to send no text message at 3 in the morning to my people like that, because whatever that meeting it can be done later between the hours of work.
Mhm.
But because they wanted to do this meeting kind of like, as you could say, off the clock, nobody, because their work was 8 to 4, but they wanted them to come in at 7. And it was assumed that from the older employees that, oh well, we're not just going to get paid for that, it's just a meeting at 7, so everyone has to leave a little bit early. But the younger employees, they're like, wait a minute, are we getting paid? Am I clocking in at 7?
Mhm.
And so they had an issue with that. So I think that type of tradition needs to just go out of the way, because it's an old custom and tradition, and it's mainly from leaders who are like, do as I say type attitude,
Right.
instead of, hey, I got to respect each of my employees, regardless. They're these the hours that they work.
Mhm.
We'll have the meeting at 1 o'clock, between their hours of work, because the meeting, is it's okay to have it between our hours of work basis,
Right.
versus those employees coming in an hour early without getting paid as well.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
and so, if you could redesign workplace culture from scratch, a piece of paper, or let's just say you are standing before a bunch of leaders, and what is the one important thing that you would tell them when it comes to workplace culture, diversity, and being inclusive for their employees?
One thing I think would be empathy and psychological safety.
Hmm.
I think at the foundation of any successful workplace culture is empathy, right? So understanding and valuing each person's unique experiences, challenges, perspectives, making sure that you're building a culture that's rooted in that psychological
Hmm.
safety allows employees to feel safe, to speak up, to share their ideas, make mistakes without fear of retribution. It encourages risk taking, innovation,
Hmm.
and honest feedback. So that would
Right.
be the one thing that, yeah, I would.
Okay. And yeah, and so psychological safety is very important, is because there are some workplace cultures where employees are afraid to speak out,
Yeah,
because it's a fear of retaliation.
yeah,
They know something's wrong, but they don't want to speak out because they will get labeled as the black sheep in the workplace, and other employees might shun them as well. And
right,
so I always tell people, like, psychological safety, your employee should be able to address a problem or an issue with anyone in the workplace without them being targeted, or fear of retaliation. Because some of these workplaces, that have been around for like a long time, and so it's like, I'm the boss, you do what I say type attitude, and
hmm,
employees, you just do your work. But
right,
it's a little bit different now, and so employees are speaking up against, like, things such as harassment, bullying, or things of that nature as well.
hmm,
And I know I talk a lot about psychological safety, and it's just so important in the workplace, regardless of if they are boomers or they're Gen Z, or millennials,
hmm,
because all employees should feel respected, and they should be able to go into work, do their job, and just be respected. They should be able to voice their opinions as well. Granted, in constructive platform, but yeah, so psychological safety is very important in the workplace.
yes.
So
I,
let's see. So, bonus question. And I did this with Joanna too.
okay.
Okay. So, because we are both graduates of Kaiser University, who was your favorite instructor and why?
Mm, I really liked so this is funny. I actually was never in Dr. Mendelssohn's courses,
Mm-hmm.
but I did have a good amount of engagement with him at our residency.
Mm-hmm.
And I had so many great conversations, and I learned so much from him in
Mm-hmm.
the 3 days that we were down there. That I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed, you know, being able to learn from him. There was she was one of the statistics teachers, and she's gonna hear this and she's gonna kill me because I her
Dr.
name's right
Dynam?
here. Hmm?
Dr. Dynam? She taught statistics.
Yes.
Dr. Dynam.
I really enjoyed her. And because, you know, even though the concepts sometimes were hard to understand, she was more than willing to just say, okay, fudge what we just talked about. Let's explain it a whole different way, that maybe you can understand. And so just being open and willing to meet other students where they were at,
Mm-hmm.
I thought was very important. And, you know, in those weekly, the weekly Zoom sessions that we had for class, she did that very often. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even though I sometimes had more of an understanding one week versus another week, and somebody else was struggling and asked a question, I still learned from those engagements. So I think it's important to just, well, you know, we'll discuss it later. Or if you just read through chapter 3 again, then
Right.
maybe you'll get it. No, she was like, you know, we're just going to take our time with this, and let's
Mm-hmm.
really talk through it. And I think that that is just so important, and that's why those are, you know, teachers that are extremely impactful.
Right, that just taking that extra step, you know,
Yes.
because like you said, some teachers would be like, "Yeah, just you'll be okay. Just read this chapter and it'd be
Yeah,
fine."
it's fine. You're fine. You're
Versus
fine.
the other teachers like, "Nope, let's sit down one on one, and we're going to make sure you understand it." And that's
Yeah.
very valuable as well.
Yes.
Okay, so Dr. King, I want to thank you for joining us today on the Healthy Workplace.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
sharing your knowledge on workplace diversity and inclusiveness in the workplace. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with those that you feel that might need to listen to it. And once again, I want to thank you all for being here with myself and Dr. Kinga. And I want to wish you all a great day. Stay safe in the healthy workplace. Thank you.
Thank you.